Good evening. A little early tonight, been a little bit too late. And it's good evening from me. And it's probably good evening from my guest as well. It's Caroline Stevens. Now, tonight...
Hello.
Hello. Now, tonight, I'd like to welcome our guests because... Well, I say guests, our viewers, because we're going international. Because we've got viewers from Canada, where I believe it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's good afternoon to Canada. From America, where if they're on the eastern seaboard, it's good afternoon. I don't know what it would be on the other side. From Australia and New Zealand. Now I know it's 8 o'clock in the morning in New Zealand. I don't know. It's not. I think it's a little bit different to that in Australia.
Well, Australia's got different time zones.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's
East and West.
Yeah, and we've also got people listening in Indonesia, Russia, Denmark. We've got quite a few viewers from Denmark and Germany. And on the continent, they're an hour ahead. So it's good evening to everybody. And I don't know what it is in Indonesia, but where it's morning, midday or afternoon, hello anyway. So, Caroline, you've been very busy this week. And can we do a roundup of, say, from last Wednesday to this Wednesday? Because you're really doing...
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Well, I've had Sandy Adams on. We've been talking about the Green New Deal. And we've been talking about the future in the UK. And then I've had lots of people who are prepared to talk about their time with social services and how their children have been removed from them. And
oh, we've lost you. Oh, where's she gone? Well, we appear to have lost Caroline. I don't know where she's gone. Oh dear. Well, I'll have to wing it for a little while until she comes back. She's done a fantastic roundup this week. I've never seen a lady so busy, I think. I mean, she's churning out videos left, right and centre. And I'd like to say good evening to everybody. Hello, Monty. Hello, Patsy. Hello, Michael. She's back. And no. Are you back, Caroline?
And there then.
You're back again. We've been talking about you, but not with you. So I'm sorry, you sort of cut off about a couple of minutes ago. So you're back again.
So basically, I've been interviewing people who've had the children removed from them by the state, and the states employ qualified people, qualified liars, qualified people who know how to trigger a parent. Basically, all these people have got the information collated by the state. And if you know the right people, you can obtain that information about somebody who's had their children removed. So it's like not confidential at all. The power is in the hands of a few people, and that information can be shared by those in the know to other people who maybe have the money. And I'm trying to be cryptic here because I know what's going on, and it's a little bit difficult to explain. It's a little bit difficult for people maybe to believe that information which is supposed to be confidential is actually being shared far and wide, especially if you know the right people.
Well, let's sort of split to two areas, shall we? What type of people do that type of job? And I know in the chat room it'll probably say psychopaths. Well, we know that. But what about the underdogs of the psychopaths? And secondly, I've been doing a little bit of research, and I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to put 2 and 2 together and make 100. But there seems to be a kind of trend that's gone through history. And what I'm finding is that, for example, in the Victorian times, ragamuffins disappeared off the streets of London, and they disappeared off the streets in Ireland, and they ended up in slavery in America and other places. And then you come forward a little bit more, and quite slave trade in the 1920s and 30s, and it was quite big, where women and young girls just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them. And sometimes they were found in China and all kinds of places, and it was a white slave trade. People have forgotten about it. And also we think of slaves being Africans. Well, no, there was a lot of European slaves, but that's another section. And we come forward a little bit more. 1,500 children were evacuated during World War II, 1940. There's a lot of that. What happened there? Very suspicious. And then we come forward a little bit more, and children in Liverpool were told that they were orphans and were sent to Australia, where a lot of them, not all, ended up on farms where they were treated like slaves, and a lot of the young girls were sexually abused. And that transportation happened into the 1970s, as recently as that. And there was a documentary on it, I think it was Channel 4, where they interviewed these people who are now adults, and they were saying what a horrendous life they had. And they found out when they were in their 40s and 50s that they actually did have parents. They weren't orphans. And a lot of them are heartbroken because a lot of their parents had since died recently. So that's another area of interest. Now, I'll probably go into that deeper at a later date because I'm still researching into it. And again, I like to have everything. I like to cross-check and make sure I'm absolutely thorough on what I've been looking at. But I know what I've just said are facts, 100% facts. You can check them out. Now let's look at the people that are administering this situation. Could you, I, or our viewers do a job that they're doing? And what makes that person? And I think it was the free expression schools of the 1960s, because that generation of the 1960s are now running things and are now in positions of authority. And when you look at the 1960s, I was very young at the time, there was lots of experts in inverted commas who were telling people how to bring up children. There was free expression schools. There's all kinds of very weird things going on. And I think what we've got now is the product of that. Over to you, Caroline.
Oh my gosh. You've got pedophilic information exchange. So associated with the PI, as it's called, you've got MPs who are on the Privy Council today, who are involved with or have been associated with the paedophile information exchange. You have got many, in fact, it might come as a surprise to many of your viewers that the majority of the MPs indulge in paedophilic activities. This has been proved time and time again by sting operations by the mainstream media. Do any of these MPs come to justice? No, they don't. They are corporations, we are corporations. And until you bring these people into court as their living flesh, the living man, we will not get anywhere. So it's all very well and good for people to say, oh, I'm going to take Barclays Bank to court. Oh, I'm going to take the Privy Council to court, or the Queen. It's, you know, it's all, they're all corporations. So they have to be taken into court as a living person. Now, in between's time, we need to get people on the same page. Where do we go from here in the meantime? We just need to be educating the people, surely, because not many people really understand what the birth certificate really holds for them and their children. Why did we bother registering our children? Because we were basically giving them over to the state, handing them over, in fact. So we look after our children on behalf of God, whether you're religious or not. That's our role. But now the state has intervened and got us to sign this piece of paper and got us to re-register our children to a third party, effectively. That's right. Hi, guys. Great timing, keeping me company on my journey I'm about to embark on. Unite the clans.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, thank you. Now you're watching this show and driving at the same time. I'm confused.
You're not going to Clacton, are you? Centre of civilization as we know it, and land of the obese and chip eaters. No, I'm sorry, I should say.
Yes, come on. Right. So where are we going with this then? Well, so the birth certificate is the answer. And, we should not give up our birth certificates to anybody, because that's not going to be the key either. We don't, it's like throwing good money after bad. We do not trust anybody if they're collating information about us.
Yeah, but hang on a minute. Can I just stop, Caroline? Because a lot of our viewers may not know or may not realise. I think they should actually see the video that you did with, was it Barry, a couple of days ago? He explains it very, very well about the birth certificate. And what it is the straw man. When you're born, two people are created. There's the living person and there's the birth certificate. And the birth certificate is like if you get a bill, it cannot come to you. It has to go to your birth certificate. And the reason for that is it's rather like a company. Supposing I worked for Tesco's and you worked for Sainsbury's and had a punch up and they went to court, I would say, hello, I'm Chris representing Tesco's. And you would say, hello, I'm Caroline representing Sainsbury's. You wouldn't change your name by default to Sainsbury's, and I wouldn't change mine to Tesco's. We're representing, and that's exactly the same as the birth certificate. Your certificate is your trading name, and that's why when you get a bank statement, it's in capital letters, because it's not you, it's your trading name. And that's why when you go to court, you can only represent that trading name, because you are Caroline and I'm Chris. But I bet you if you've got a debit card or anything like that, it's in capital letters. That's not you. That's your trading name. And I've got my debit card that's in capital letters. That's not me. That's my trading name. And it's the same with council tax. It goes to your trading name. It's in capital letters, which is not you, because it can't be you because it's your trading name. So I hope I've explained that, and I hope I've got it right, Caroline, because I think it was.
Well, it's interesting because I've just spoken to a guy today, and he's managed to not pay his council tax for 14 years.
Hey!
14 years, and I'm thinking, has my family been paying their council tax for the last 24 years?
Interesting. Well, you're not actually, it's not a tax. It's actually council tax is really a contract. And when you get the statement, which should be dropping through your letterbox anytime now and between now and April, what you're getting is an offer of contract, where it's assumed you're taking that contract up. Because when you pay council tax, you're paying not only the council workers' pensions, but you're paying it to Great Britain. It's paid on to Great Britain PLC. So it's a contract. It's a bit like if you, for example, if you go into a car park, you get a ticket in there. That ticket's not to you. It's a contract. So I went to a car park once and overstayed my welcome in there, and I got
No, you've never overstayed your welcome, surely.
And what happened is this very official document came through. It's a private car park. I just sent back. I said, thank you for your offer of contract. Didn't put any names. I viewed the details, and it's not in my interest to carry on. Please provide signatory evidence signed in wet ink, witnessed by 2 people. Full stop. I think it's the 1882 Contracts Act, something like that. I've got to look it up. But and I put the acts down, all that, and they ignored it, and I kept getting these bits of paper through the post. I just ignored it because there was no signed document. They got to, and they fool you into paying the contract, but it's a contract. That's it. So now with the council, you've got to be a little bit more careful. You've got to really know what you're doing there. But if it's a private car park, you just keep asking them for the signed document of the contract, and they can't provide it because there isn't one. That's it. And also, you're then telling them, you don't want to tell them that it was you in that car, because remember, you don't own your car. Did you know that? Nobody owns their car.
Yes, I do. You don't own your own house either.
No, that's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. So that's a little bit of diversion there. But is it Barry you interviewed, the Irish Australian?
Barry McIntyre, and I've interviewed him twice before. And he was saying, he was promoting common law courts, and I said, but common law courts do not have a success rate at all. And how do you know that? When you give up your details to an organization like an e-petition group, how do you know what they're going to do with your details? And I really urge people to think carefully before you register for anything these days, because things are speeding up. And if you're registering with an organization that has no success whatsoever, then you really have to question your own sanity.
Precisely. And also, what was very interesting was what Sandy was talking about with these, shall we say, fake consensus, because I've actually got it on video. Yes, video. Because did you know, if you go along to a council planning meeting now, it's perfectly legal to film it. You can do it straight open in the air. You don't even have to ask permission. You can stand there and film it, which I did, and I found out afterwards I was perfectly legal to do it, and I actually found the law, etc., etc. So if anybody would have come up to me, I'd just shown it to them. But I politely asked permission. I politely told them, I didn't ask permission, that I would be filming it, and they said, yeah, it's okay. We can't stop you, And the developer in this planning meeting said 75% of the people, local residents, are totally in favour of this development. Where do you get the 75% from? But of course, I couldn't speak in the planning meeting because you're not allowed to speak unless
evidence, please. Surely you need evidence. Where did they get the 75%? Who did they ask? Did they ask? Who did they ask then, Chris?
Well, they used a PR consultancy, and they was actually sending in 30 to 40 approvals of. When you during the planning, before it goes to planning, you can send in letters of objection or whatever, and they were sending in emails saying how marvellous from all different people, whether they were fake or not, I don't know. And they were sending them in batches of 30 at a time, saying, we can't wait for this to be built. We think it's marvellous. It will make the area so much better, blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah. And then, to crown it all, which I've got on videotape, was a conservative councillor, allegedly, who I think is a facilitator, in the meeting said, what is the density of the housing with this proposed development? And he said,
spoke like that, did he?
something like that, you know.
It's
he
obviously not from Yorkshire, then.
like that, or like this. And he said, why isn't it 150 houses or dwellings per hectare? Now, a few years ago in London, high density was 100 dwellings per hectare. So that gives you some idea. 150.
That's high density. So you're talking about 50% greater in Hertfordshire.
In Hertfordshire, and surprise, surprise, they're going to build smart cities. Well, isn't that funny? Slap my thigh. What a coincidence. And I actually got an email from this chap that says that we've got to house immigrants top priority because there's nowhere for them to live, because we need immigrants to stop the country going bankrupt. I think that man is a facilitator, comrades. He's a communist.
Do you want to announce? Do you want to say this guy?
I beg your pardon? No, but
Do we want to discuss this?
Well, I can't give his name because I didn't know I was going to mention it before the program, and I'd have to look back on my notes, which would take ages. But he's
you've forgotten his name. Oh my goodness me!
Yeah, well, let's face
it. In our justice system, that we cannot get justice, so we have to name and shame. Surely.
Well, that's right. But on the next program, I can name and shame him. And I can actually show the email because I didn't know he was going to bring this up. So, and I'll have a, you know.
Loose lips sink ships.
I beg your pardon.
Loose lips sink ships.
That's right. That's right. In fact, I can show you extracts from the council meeting. So if you're suffering from insomnia, it'll push people off to sleep. But,
okay, right.
Actually,
does he know he's a limited company?
Past, but oh yes, well, our local council has actually got their own property company called Badger BC Investments. Isn't that interesting? And one of the councils,
Badger BC before Christ.
I don't know what BC stands for, but it says BC, and it's to do with property. Isn't that interesting? And they're approving lots of housing development, money. And if viewers go on to my site and look at the early stuff, I've actually got the video on there and they can find out who he is. But I would advise you, if you're suffering from insomnia, it will cure you, because I've actually got the whole council meeting on there. It's but no, I edited the boring bits out and left the not so boring bits in.
Okay, right. Over to you then, Chris.
Over to me. Right. Well, let's go on to what's happening with this green agenda, because it's about...
I was going to say, you watched my earlier interview, didn't you, which I uploaded?
Mm-hmm.
The new Green Deal.
Mm.
So we've got no more cows, no more sheep. We've got the prospect of living off insects. Well, that's something to look forward to, isn't it? I can't even stand to look at creepy crawlies, never mind eating them.
But did you know that statistically, going over to vegetarianism might kill more animals than we realize? Because
how does that work then?
Well, the way it works, so I heard this earlier from a Dr. David Duke. Better not say that name, because I might be booted off of YouTube, because he's supposed to be a nasty person, and he believes nasty things, of course. And Dr. David Duke was saying that if you get rid of all the cows and you got to have intensive agriculture, And a lot of the animals, you look at it, you've got nice green pastures, and
Yeah.
America, where they have these little prairie dogs and whatever hopping around, and they survive on these nice green pastures. And if you get rid of all the cows and that, you will then cut down on squirrels and all wildlife that survives round these pastures, because it's got to be intensive farming with agriculture, because vegetarians have got to eat much more to get the vitamins in, because we've gone through thousands of years of evolution where we've eaten meat. I mean, I used to be a vegetarian, but I gave it up because I never felt so unhealthy. But apparently what he was saying is that we will see a hidden genocide of animals. Well, see, if you want to realize it, there's a hidden genocide of animals. And he could, on his program, he explains it better than I can. But getting rid of these cows and things like that, it will completely destroy an ecosystem. And because they'll have to use chemicals and Monsanto to help grow all these crops and things like that. So that's a nice future, isn't it? So he said they're probably going to, he had all the statistics and everything. He said they'll probably kill more animals that you don't see, like squirrels, owls, voles, frogs, toads, flies, and all kinds of things like that are essential to the ecosystem, by having this intensive farming, which they will have to have, that's got GMO, which they'll have to have. So he said, really, it's not green at all. He said it's industrialized agriculture, which will kill the planet and cause more CO2, which is a good thing, not a bad thing, than anything else. So,
well, it's interesting you say this, because people for quite a long time have said about the UN Agenda 2030 eradicating many of the population, and now we are on full view, seeing that we've got to eradicate livestock such as sheep and cows. And, we have been embracing, if you like, veganism for the past few months. We've got the hairy bikers talking about veganism and new vegan menus. I walked past Greg's the Baker's today, and it's, they've got this fantastic new vegan steak bake. Well, vegan and steak in the same sentence, is that not a contravention of the Trade Descriptions Act? So maybe we should be saying, is this a vegan cow bake? What does actually veganism mean? We need to be very precise with our language, because this is where your spelling becomes very, very important. And this is how the state and our government has been able to, and the courts have been able to bamboozle us for so long. We need to take back control. I'm not very happy. I mean, I had lamb for tea tonight. I love lamb and I love steak. I love duck. I love all those red meats that the government intends to be phased out. This to me is like torture, because food is something that many of us actually really enjoy eating. It's either a case of, do you live to eat or eat to live? And I think a lot of the population fit into one or t'other categories. Now, I love my food. I'm sure you do. So it's like, so if we're going to be told we can't eat what we want, we're going to be told we can't use our gas appliances, we can't use our gas heating. If we're going to be told we cannot use our petrol or diesel cars, if we're going to be told, well, your children might be at risk and they're going to be taken off you, or your grandchildren. Actually, quite frankly, I am so sad for those people who are watching that really have not cottoned on to the idea yet that our government is supporting global communism. They are just wearing some sort of blue flag. I'm just looking for something blue at the minute around the kitchen. And they just seem to think that just because they wear a blue rosette, they represent a certain lifestyle, a certain culture. And it's almost like, I don't know, do you remember doing the science lessons at school? And we had that little dog and a little bell, and it was called, it was about conditioning. So when that bell rang, the dog would salivate.
Oh, yeah, so it's a Russian experiment.
Because he thought he was going to get fed.
That's right.
So every time that bell rang, the dog thought food, food, food. And we see a blue rosette, and we are conditioned to thinking this is some sort of right of centre, family supportive environment, aspiration of middle classes, etc., etc. Well, to turn that on its head, that is just a total con. And it has taken so many people such a long time, and still they haven't got it yet in many cases, that a blue rosette does not represent any of those things they thought of or believed in over decades, and their families have believed in over decades. The whole idea of these different political parties is simply to divide the people, because if the elites knew that the people had commonalities like 5G, like vaccinations, like chemtrails, like children being removed from them, and that can happen to so many different classes of people.
That's right.
All these items are different, have different priorities for different people. It's horses for courses.
Well,
if you've never been in the social care system, you might find it difficult to believe that you can have your child removed by leaving your children, your middle class children, with a babysitter who inadvertently turns their head for 1 minute, and then the child gets burnt on a cooker or puts styling tongs on or what have you, and then you can be done for neglect. You can be done for sleeping in bed with your child, your baby. Your baby could be way less than a year old. Now, Indigenous populations, it is quite normal to sleep with your child. In fact, the previous generation, if you didn't sleep with your child, you would be seen as very abnormal, that you never slept with your child, because children need that nurturing, that you building up a bond. A lot of people are breastfeeding, etc., etc. But in today's society, you can have your child removed from you willingly by the state. You know, they are out to get you if you cohabit your bed with a baby. Cot deaths are not happening in your bed. Cot deaths, by the very definition, are deaths in the cot, not in the bed. So we are now in the most perverse situation where our government is saying to us, courtesy of Stonewall, that we are going to take your children from the age of 4. We are going to indoctrinate them. We are going to tell them they can be whatever they want. But when I say whatever they want to be, really the crux of this is whether they want to be a girl, a boy, or 96 other different gender. This scares the pants. This should scare the pants off the majority of the population, because the government has accepted for decades now so much money from the global corporations and the banksters to perpetuate an agenda. And I'll tell you something, Chris. The vast majority of our government are paedophiles. That is the truth of the matter. And you might get a little bit of activity in your green room, but that is the truth. And why is it that Tom Watson is being vilified for speaking the truth about paedophiles in Parliament, and now he is being denied a peerage? I'm not saying anybody should get a peerage, because I think that time has gone under the present system. But I have to say, and I have met Tom Watson outside the Labour Party conference in Brighton a few years ago, when I was standing for, when I was the campaign manager for the referendum. He obviously was a Remainer. I obviously am the opposite side of the spectrum. But the bottom line is, he did put his head above the parapet and stood against those paedophiles. And now he's not only being vilified, but now they're calling for him to have an investigation against him about his highlighting a paedophile ring. It was on the front page of the Times today that he was going to be questioned. It was in the Telegraph, the Guardian. It is truly, truly shocking. Sorry, that's ridiculous. My children aren't that old, and my health, courage to have my babies in my bed. Yes, exactly. But if you do that today and you get in touch, if basically the social workers are involved with your family, you will get your children removed from you for cohabiting. So I'm saying it's ridiculous, yes, but what I'm saying is that the social workers are looking for any reason that they can find to remove your children, because it's worth £250,000 to the council. Who knows how much it's worth? I'm trying to find out exactly how much it's worth. It could be based on the age of the child, but we're looking at £250,000. So once you pay the social worker off with their bonuses, social workers get bonuses for taking children off their families. You've paid the shrink for concocting some story or other, and then you've paid the the solicitors, the barristers, if it has to go to court, and then the councils are quids in. Come on, people, wake up! These people. It's just shocking. It's just truly shocking, Chris. It makes me angry. It does make me angry when you have shrinks saying to parents, how would you feel if you never saw your child again?
Well, let's look at this into two reasons. This is very recent. When I say recent, it sounds as if I'm going to, I think what happens, things evolve and mutate as they go on. So I say, what's happened with this, what you were just talking about, it's been going on for ages. But let's look at two other things. Number one, this is a fact. The natural progression of capitalism is communism. Now, that shocks people.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
The natural progression of capitalism is communism. Now, I can go into that, but it's a bit deep. But then let's look at the other thing. Barry Trower once said something very interesting. He said, nearly everybody in Parliament is compromised in some way. Now, if a person's guilty of something, what they do, I've found, is they accuse somebody else of what they do. And there's a particular group of people that are very clever at that. And I won't go down that alley either, because I don't want to be booted off of YouTube. But look at all these paedophiles in Parliament. Could you imagine working for a company? Now, how many is it? 650, I think it is, isn't it? MPs in Parliament? That's off the top of my head.
Yes.
could you imagine working for a company of 650 employees, of which majority of them are paedophiles? Huh? So what's going on? And I think that there is the hidden hand that says, we know you're a naughty boy. We know you've been up to something a bit. And it's women paedophiles as well, not as men. But of course, if you do what we say, you'll have a nice, peaceful life. If you don't do what we say, you won't. And a lot of people believe, for example, with Bill Clinton, he stepped out of line on some reason or other. And that's why Monica Lewinsky case, that came about. And I believe Ted Ethan, it's a case of you get the country into the common market or we'll expose what you've been up to. And I think that's what the main problem is. And as I've said many times before, governments do not rule or run countries. Banks rule countries, civil servants run countries, and governments are there to give you the impression that it's a democracy when it isn't. So, you know, it's that to me is a sad fact. Got Monty, Cash for Kids. That's right, Monty. And he says here, yes, I've read all of Anthony C. Sutton's works, and this was his conclusion. That's interesting, yes. There has to be a dialectic.
Dialectic? What's one of them then, Monty?
I thought my granny had suffered from that and she got ointment for it. It says here, psychopaths are renowned for using projection, part of the gas lighting technique. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Psychopaths are very good at that. And what you were saying about, I mean, there's a lot of people, like, for instance, in Germany, the legal system there is so bad that I'm talking about a different subject. Shall we say a subject of recent modern history, shall we say. Since the Berlin Wall came down and the Russian or the former Soviet records have been opened up, people are finding that certain things were not quite true, what we've been told. And that's all I'm prepared to go to. And there's scientists, historians, actually serving jail sentences now in Germany and in France for thought crimes, because you can think the wrong thing. 1984, I think it's gone beyond that, hasn't it, really? But
well, when you say about thought crimes, you know, they cannot at the moment read your mind. So when you say thought crimes, those thought crimes must have gone from the brain and they must have been spoken out. But with 5G and all that, they will eventually be able to read your mind. And that also, the microchipping, that will be a big problem.
But I think the vaccination coronavirus will come in before that, where it'll be mandatory to have a vaccination against the coronavirus, and then you see people dropping like flies. And I really do believe.
Well, it's interesting, you know, under the new Green Deal, you have this airline industry being totally decimated, but yet you've got now the coronavirus is decimating the airline industry. So, you know, we can't really preempt. Caroline, those who run the world follow the methods of the Hegelian dialectic. So who's the Hegelian? Hegelian. I've not come across the Hegelian dialectic before.
I think once you can get a grasp of the bigger picture, it becomes easier to see. But now let's look.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy to see now. It's so easy to see that they just want to take all the children from us and indoctrinate them from, you know, we hand them over effectively from 20 up to 28 days from their birth. And it's that point we have unwittingly given them authority to take our children, in the same way as we buy our cars, we register them, and we actually give them authority. They can take our cars at any time. Same with our houses. We actually, and it's interesting because I've got a friend on Facebook who works in the City of London, and she says this is an opinion, I said, this is not an opinion, this is fact. Now, it would be great if people like Monty and other people could give that person the information, but she at the moment is suffering cognitive dissonance. How do you overcome cognitive dissonance? People are very proud. They think they have made it in life. They think they have got their nice little fast car. They've got their nice little pad. And they have no cares. They think they have no cares in the world. And in actual fact, in my opinion, in my experience, the most affluent people are untroubled people at the moment. But it becomes the tipping point where this cancer that we have in our society, which started with the middle classes, it started with the working class. It started with the classes who are on benefits, because they were the people, the working class was the first class that was targeted by having open door immigration. Now, the middle classes are going to be targeted, and they will start squealing. Is it too late? That's the question.
And also, just think on the other line. Okay, so we say we'll do away with all petrol and diesel vehicles. So all the people working in that technology, where they've got diesel engines now, because petrol engines are, electric cars burst into flames. Petrol engines, petrol is very volatile, and diesel is very safe. And they've got diesel engines now to a point where they're so clean. I think they're cleaner in some ways than petrol. All those people that have studied for years vehicle technology, out of work. Okay, then you've got farmers who know how to farm. Overnight, out of work. Then you've got other people. For example, power station. People understand power stations, things like that. We're going to have our silly windmills out of work. And you think
actually, now this is funny.
This is all going to create. How are those people going to live? They're going to live off the state. And what the state going to do? If you do that, you'll withdraw your benefits. If you protest against this, you won't get these benefits. We're that close away from that. In fact, we're almost there now. So you've got to do what the state told you.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because on my timeline, I was talking about how House of Lords, they get £323 a day. And if you're on and they get their expenses on top to get to Parliament. Yeah. But you've got ordinary people who are over the age of 25, and they get £317 per month. And they have to get their expenses, if they're traveling anywhere by bus or what have you, they have to take those expenses out of that £317. So you have got such a wide divergence now of those who have and those who have not. And it just seems to me that we, as a group of people, are not really fully comprehending what is really going on here.
That's right.
What's going on?
Well, also, you think about it. In the early 80s, they said we've got over 400 years of coal reserves under the United Kingdom. And they got power stations, coal-fired power stations, to the point where they had scrubbers, etc., where they're very, very clean and very, very efficient. And they're very simple to maintain. And it's a whole industry. Now, if we needed to open up those coal mines again because of this...
we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to under the new Green Deal.
Yeah, but hang on. Who is around to do the mining. That expertise is gone, completely gone, because they closed the mines down. When was the miners' strike? Ooh, 80s, 90s. Those people now are either retired or dead. They're gone. Farming. The old farming methods, which have just been destroyed, where we became, well, because did you know that the coal industry in Britain was the most advanced and safest in the world? Now you look at the other areas, farming. The people that knew how to farm, they're dying off. And people that understand animal husbandry and that type of thing, we have all vegetarians. And if we do get, I don't believe in government, but I think we sometimes have to have a government for the sheeple and the people that want to, because there's people that can think for themselves and people that want to be led. Now, as I was saying on one of my monologues, if someone came along like Gandhi, who said, right, we've had enough, they'd have to have a ring of steel around them, because they'd have every assassin you could wish to think of, from the banks right the way down, after them. Then you'd have the BBC and ITV against them, accusing them of this, that, and the other. So the first thing that person would have to do is somehow take over all the communication network, which is easier said than done. How they do that, I don't know. But it's the only way they could succeed, because communication and mass communication is extremely powerful, very, very powerful. And I think it's the biggest, most powerful weapon there is. And when you look, for example, First World War, all there was newspapers. There was no radio. And they got people to volunteer en masse to go and get killed. Second World War, you did have radio and you had newspapers. And there was more conscientious objectors. Come the Vietnam War, when you had television, the amount of conscientious objectors in America was phenomenal. So really, people do wake up if they've got the right information. And that's just the problem. We're being told we've got fake protest groups. Look at this climate emergency garbage. Those protesters, they go along, apparently they're giving their protest signs, and they've got facilitators that are telling them what to do and what to say. Like, oh, okay, right, oh, yeah, well, I was going to come to an end.
Well, you've got Greta, haven't you? You know, you've got Greta there. She's going to be in Bristol on Friday. And that lady, was it from Pakistan or wherever, she's called Mandela or Mandaya, the girl who got shot in the face, and she now is an ambassador for the UK. What's she called? Oh, we're talking about Flat Earth. These people are now uniting, and they're getting all the media coverage. So, you know, what is it? Greta does all this business, and we know that's Illuminati, and she's like a little child, but in an adult. Is she in an adult's body, or an adult in a little child's body? Who knows?
Well,
is she human? Is she a human being?
Well, Sandy said she's a very disturbed child. I think she's 100% correct, and it's child abuse what they're doing with her. But there's a German girl. I don't know. I can't remember her name.
19 years of age.
She's saying the opposite to Greta. And she's showing science and scientists, real scientists, who are saying it's a load of old nonsense. It's communist rubbish, all this climate stuff. And it really is. And I mean, people are believing a 17-year-old girl that doesn't know what she's talking about. David Attenborough, who is a TV personality, he's not a scientist, and a politician, Al Gore, and Brian Cox, who quite honestly is an educated, in my view, allegedly, an educated twit. So when you got
what's in a name, eh?
Precisely. Well, I often spell it wrong with a P instead of a C, but there we go. Well, anyway, Caroline, how are we
anyway, we must be coming to the end of the show. We
are, and I think that we. Give me one moment. Oh dear. I hope it's not the coronavirus. Let's have a quick look into the chat box. Monty's been saying, he's been very busy tonight. He says, for example, flat Earth is a really simple example of how to, just right, divide people who could have easily united in realizing something was wrong with the system. But
that's really interesting, because there's a guy over in America, I won't mention his name. People said to me, why don't you interview him? And I wrote to him, never heard anything. And I'm not going to mention his name. But now he's been talking about flat Earth. and people are saying, oh, he's a shill, etc., etc. So it's probably just as well I never did waste my time interviewing him, because this is being used as, oh, he's too slick, he's this, he's that. If you are too slick in your presentation, which we obviously are not, then you are obviously working as a state presenter.
Well, that's right. And that's very right. And also, what gets me with these climate action people, isn't it funny?
Who's Nigel? Hegel. Oh, right, Hegel. Right, okay. I thought it was Nigel then. I must put my glasses on next time.
So, and Monty, if we don't, would a note from our parents, well, no, both my parents are dead, but would
no, I'm not very well. I do like homework. I'm the teacher normally.
David Attenborough. Oh, yes, so you are. The one on his head is, I think, a bigger bear. And we got here, yes, they fear us uniting, which is very, very true. But
actually, to be honest, unite the clans, that is 110% true. Yeah. So you've got all these people in the out movement, the leave movement, and they will be at loggerheads with each other. So at the moment, there is no way that these groups are going to unite because of egos, because of dirt on them. They're being held there. That's the problem.
Well, I've actually been in contact with somebody that watched the fracking movements, and there was genuine people that were against the fracking and a fake government one who was against the fracking, and it was like
I have no idea who you're talking about, Chris.
I think we do. And then there's other areas, like for instance, how do this climate emergency people, what is it, Extinction Rebellion, how they're allowed to take over a bridge in London? The police sort of smile, hello. So can you imagine us two going down there with yellow vests on, trying to take over a bridge in London? We'd be arrested within seconds. And then they're digging up a lawn in Cambridge, and the police are standing there smiling and all that. And I actually seen a photograph of Extinction Rebellion with a big sign saying, working in coordination with the Metropolitan Police. I think that says it all, doesn't it, really? Saving the world with the Metropolitan Police. And
so they're in Bristol on Friday, so anybody who wants to get down to Bristol, right, George Frederick Hegel. Yeah, Extinction Rebellion and Greta is they're gonna be down in Bristol. So if you want to say your piece, get down there.
Well, actually, Vinnie Eastwood came out with something. I don't know if you've ever heard of Vinnie Eastwood, but he's on New Zealand. He got his own New Zealand show, and he said that he found that going up to these people that are totally brainwashed, like he calls them the scumbags and scumbaggery, is a waste of time because you're talking to a zombie. And he said, when you go to places where people really do know the truth, he said, you'll find out much more. And it's such a more of a larger weight. But as the big problem is how are we going to stop all this nonsense? And I mean, again, it's communication. That is the big problem, because we're now silenced so much. We can't say, I remember a time, I'm a little bit old, I don't know, a bit similar age, when my parents used to say, it's a free country, you can say what you want. Do you remember that? Does anybody in chat remember that? It's a free country.
Yeah.
Say what you want.
I tell you what, yeah. to end up with, to end the show, have you been buying stuff in the supermarkets or the shops recently and they've said to you, do you want a receipt?
Yes.
Have you come across that? Do you want a receipt?
Yes.
Yes. I said, yes. What happens if I walk out of the shop and I have no receipt and somebody a store detective stops me because something beeped? Have you ever bought something from a shop where they have not removed the security tag?
Yes.
Okay, this is a really serious issue now. A really, really serious issue. You could leave the shop and you have still got a security tag on your item. and the shop said, do you want your receipt? If you have no receipt, you paid cash, the alarm goes off, what happens next? I'll leave that with the people watching, because actually, whatever anybody's saying in the chat room, this is a very serious issue, because you could get done for shoplifting and you have no proof to get yourself out of that situation.
100%.
This is what the government's doing.
Yeah, yeah. It's the government is there to extract as much money as they can off of you to pay the usury scam. Full stop, end of. That's what it's all about. And now what is really running the shop is you've got the usury scammers at the top of the pyramid and you've got the industrialists below them. And that, again, is pure capitalism, which is communism. And if you don't believe me, just open your eyes and walk down your local high street. How many family businesses do you see now compared with a few years ago?
Absolutely. And I was in a big department store today, and there's nobody in there, and it's owned by the banks now. And you just think, why are the banks running the show here? There's no money being made, so they've asset stripped it. Where do we go from here? Thank you so much, Chris, for having me on your show. I'll see you next time. And thanks to everybody for watching. We've been whinging and moaning, but hopefully you've learnt something from what we've been discussing, especially this receipt thing, because I've just been to the shops tonight, just before I came on the show. And again, they said, do you want your receipt? And it's almost now like some of the staff are sort of going, oh, when you say you want a receipt, and actually they just obviously don't understand the importance of you wanting a receipt. They're using it as, oh, it's a waste of paper. What do you have to show for the fact if you bought something by cash? How do you prove it if you don't have a receipt? I'll just leave it there.
Well, before we go, do you fancy the usual tomorrow? Well, tomorrow you've got, I'm on at 7 o'clock, a little bit earlier tomorrow, so I can bore everybody.
Are you doing a rant here?
I might do a rant, you never know. And also, do you fancy coming in on the usual Thursday slot? Thursday
slot. A slot. What are you drinking?
Because I think this is high-powered H2O. Yeah, it's H2O. So normally you come on a Thursday, and it's a Wednesday today, so it's usually probably better on Thursdays. So we'll work something out. But anyway, next week, and you'll have to, if you're suffering from insomnia, please tune in at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And you can have me waffling on.
Well, in the meantime, you can be watching Caroline Stevens interview Sandy Adams on the Green New Deal, part 3. Yeah, you saw that, didn't you, before you came on the show?
And I didn't put it on,
She's
did I?
lovely, isn't she? No, CarolineStevens.net and Caroline Stevens Seeking the Truth on YouTube. Sandy Adams, we've just done part 3. I've just uploaded it tonight. And there's going to be part 4 to come.
Wow. And I'll tell you something, there's some bloke who keeps doing blogs on your website. I don't know who he is, Eric Von Essex. Bit of a nutty bloke.
I don't know, some funny bloke, eh?
Yeah, really
like you then.
Yeah, I'm a bit weird. Anyway, thanks everybody in chat. And I do apologise if I haven't put your comment up there. I'm only human. And join me tomorrow night. No,
you're only a man, not human. You're a man.
Good night, and thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Bye.